Well, let's get to the reason that we are all here tonight. Julie Zhuo, I'm super excited to have her here for the first time at Lean Product Meetup. She's been on my list for a while, so I'm excited to have her. She is the co-founder of an awesome startup called Sundial. Hopefully she'll tell us a little bit more about that. Before that, she had a long career as a design leader at Meta. And most of you probably know her from her amazing book, The Making of a Manager, which is a bestseller. There aren't that many books that tell you how to be a good manager, and this is like one of the top books. And I know she'll tell us more, but there's a new edition coming out. We'll learn more about that very soon. She also writes on Substack at The Looking Glass, and I really like her articles. They're very insightful, so you want to check that out. And we are going to have a fireside chat about how AI is transforming product development. So with that, please join me in welcoming Julie Zhuo. Hey, Julie.
Thank you.
All right. Is your mic on?
I think so.
All right, cool. All right.
Maybe not.
No, I had mine off. And by the way, there's the Slido code, right? So while we're talking,
Is it on?
let me see.
Yeah. Flip it.
Yeah, there now it is.
Oh, okay.
All right, cool.
Great.
Awesome. Welcome, Julie. How's it
Thanks.
going?
It's going great.
All right.
How about with you?
It's going great. Anytime
How's it going, guys? Yeah.
Awesome. Anytime we have a meetup, it's great. It's so cool. All right, so let's talk about the book. Can you tell people that like the first edition or don't know about it, what's coming down the pike very, very soon? What's the new edition?
Yeah, so the new edition is coming out on September 9th. And it's just a light refresh of most of the content. But the thing that I've been feeling for the last couple of years, as we've gone through many events like the pandemic and a bit of a contraction in the tech industry, is the things that I didn't get to put in the first edition of the book. So probably the two major things that I always kick myself about is I didn't talk about managing remotely, which became a really big thing.
Yes.
So I have a new chapter about that, as well as managing during a contraction / recession / difficult period where you might have to deal with layoffs or deal with just going through a tough time in the company. And I know that we've seen that. It's been a lot rockier through Silicon Valley over these past 5 or so years. So I'm excited to at least talk about those and address those for newer managers who are going through these things for the first time.
Cool. And the new edition, this is a hardcover. The new one's going to be paperback?
Yes, the new edition is going to be paperback. So there will be an update to the hardcover as well. However, if you want to guarantee that you're getting the new edition, the paperback is probably the best bet. They kind of have to sell through the hardcover before they get the new versions of it. The Kindle version will be also updated in September as well. So the Kindle version and the paperback will be the newer version.
Cool. Great. So thanks so much for that. And actually, do you want to just touch quickly on, do you want to share any nuggets on managing remotely?
On managing remotely, I mean, Slack's great. I think the most important thing probably is just everything has to be designed with a little more intentionality. That's probably the first one. So a lot of the challenges of remote management is that you just don't really get to pick up on the cues of what's really going on for other people. Are they in alignment with me? Are they actually feeling good about what we just talked about? Do they even like their job? All of those, it's much easier to get in person, when you can feel the energy of somebody else, or even just you're talking to them during lunch and you can just ask them how they're doing. And it's much harder to do because it kind of feels awkward to do it during Slack, or to bring it up if there's everyone's jumping into a room and now you feel like you have to start the agenda. And so I think a lot of how to be more successful is just tell yourself that, hey, we have to do these things intentionally. We have to do check-ins intentionally. We have to have one-on-ones. And if I'm going to talk with someone one-on-one, I'm going to explicitly ask them things like, how's their energy? Are they feeling engaged? Is there anything that we talked about in larger meetings that they disagreed with? And just try and be much more explicit about these things, because otherwise, you can, this happens to me too still all the time, where I'm sometimes surprised because I didn't realize that this other group of people was feeling this way, because it just isn't as obvious when you're not there.
Right. Well, and it makes sense if you're a manager and you have one-on-ones, you have that one-on-one forum where you can ask that.
Yes.
As you were talking, my first thought was cross-functional partners, like your developer or your designer or your PM, but And then I'm thinking, do we have time to do a check? Like, how do we balance the time? Everyone's like back-to-back meetings. Like, are there efficient ways to do check-ins, I guess, with cross-functional coworkers, I guess?
I think there are. I mean, a couple of the tactics that I talk about in the book are like sometimes, you know, you have a team meeting, you might spend the first 5 minutes just having people. And what we do sometimes in our all-team meetings, like we'll spend the first 5 minutes, we'll have a prompt, and everyone just like puts a little sticky on our collaborative whiteboard. And sometimes it's just a check-in, like, how much do you believe in our current mission? What are you most worried about? You know, like what's the biggest problem right now that's like got you down? And so then everybody can just, it's like a more collaborative moment where everyone's like, okay, this is our time to talk about some of this stuff. So that's one. I think the other is just sometimes like I also do a lot of like direct message Slack check-ins. Like even, you know, if I do have a one-on-one with someone and we have like a one-on-one every 2 weeks or every one, I don't want people to wait. Like, because if you're feeling something today and you want to say something and you're like, oh, but the one-on-one's in 5 days, I just want people to feel like it's comfortable. And so sometimes I'll just like try and just send out a bunch of messages and just, it's like a little touch point, you know, like a more personal touch point. So then if they want to tell me something, maybe it's a little easier to do so.
Nice. That's pretty cool. Cool. And I like I'm envisioning the team members filling out sticky notes on a collaborative whiteboard like Miro or something. And the other cool thing there is they don't have to necessarily vocalize it.
Yeah.
You can do parallel. That's a problem with speech. Only one person can talk at a time, and it takes a long time to go around. So that's a good way to be more efficient. And also people that may not feel comfortable speaking up can write it down at least.
Yeah, I've even experimented with even like doing polls where it's like, here's a question, and then there's like a slider, and people put a little like a little sticker of their face on whether they agree, you know, between like 1 and 5.
When you were talking about check-ins, I was thinking about, is there any way to like have some like emotional, like, you know, you're picking like inside out, you're picking which emotion you're feeling right now or something. I mean, your Slack status gets set to angry or happy or whatever. Yeah, interesting, cool. And then how about managing in a downturn, since a lot of people are dealing with that? Any high-level tips there?
I have like a playbook for like, look, if you're gonna have to go and do the unfortunate thing of manage, like one of the hardest things I think in management is to have to let someone go, especially sometimes with a layoff where you don't feel like it's your choice and you kind of have to support what the company is doing. And so I really go into like a very concrete playbook for what you do, like what to say and how to do that. I think the thing that's interesting is that in a downturn, I actually think that there's a lot of different, like depending on where you are, like were you the decision maker or are you somebody who like decision maker is passing information down? Like it's honestly, it's like all roles are tough, but it's like tough in different ways. I think that if you are, for example, a middle manager, it's actually one of the toughest because, you know, you kind of have to execute a lot of this, and people are asking, like your people on your team are asking you, you know, for answers, but you may not actually know what's really going on because a lot of these, you know, decisions aren't really yours. And so I think that can be an especially tough place to be in. I do think one high level thing is just like, it's okay, like be aware of the feeling and that what you're going through is like pretty hard and kind of shitty, and that everyone's going through that, right? Like it's, you know, obviously the person who might be your boss who's deciding this is also having a very hard time, and the people below you who are, you know, who might get laid off is having a really hard time. I think a lot of it that's hard for us is to try and just be okay with the fact that people are having a difficult time with it and just allow like whatever feelings there are, and then just to call it what it is. Like, you know, just to be direct, empathetic, try not to sugarcoat too much. I don't think that really helps. And just to do it with as much like grace and empathy as we can.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks for hitting those topics from the new edition of the book. Why don't we switch over to talking about AI, everybody's favorite topic, and how it's transforming product development. So what have you seen so far? When you think about it, what are some of the things that you're seeing like that AI is making different?
So I think one of the most interesting things I've seen, and I see this a lot with some of the, you know, more AI native type of companies, and I'll give you one example. Like I spent some time recently with Perplexity and their head of design, and I got to see a little bit of like how are they operating, and you know they're obviously building a very AI native type of product, and I think they're also trying to operate in a very AI native type of way. And I think one of the things that they said, and which I've also seen, and what we're also trying to do with our company, is this idea of like, you know, break away the boundaries of these different roles. I think that in the past, like we've gotten really good at these playbooks of, look, we have all these different roles, right? You even started by being like, hey, who here is an engineer and a designer and a marketer? And I think that these roles have developed for good reasons because there's very rich disciplines and crafts in each of these, right? So the things that you learn as a designer around typography and usability and like patterns and interactions and like form factors, and as an engineer you're learning code and architectures and systems, and so I think we create these because we know that there's like a really deep amount of often technical hard skills to be able to do that really well. But what I think AI does is that it sort of makes it much easier for all of us to get into these other territories. Now, again, it's not like we're going to somehow AI is going to make us, the world's best engineer on day one. I don't think it's quite there, but it certainly makes us far more powerful. I mean, vibe coding is the whole idea. Like we're, people who may not have studied computer science or have spent a bunch of time learning how to code can now build something, and that's like amazing. It's amazing because maybe your skill was really understanding user psychology and what people what are the specific steps that people should go through, but you didn't know how to code it. Well, now you can actually still build something. Or if you were like a product manager and you're very, very good at actually understanding what are the specifications of something, well, now you can feed that into a prompt and then you'll be able to make something. And so I think that AI allows us to not necessarily become the best at all the stuff that we're not very good at, because there still are lanes and our areas of expertise, but it certainly makes it possible for us to move much quicker. And so I think that the biggest thing is it is going to be much more outdated, I think, for us to attach ourselves too strongly to the idea of like, what is my specific role or maybe the identity that I thought I had in the past. And I've told everyone on my team, look, let's just think of ourselves as builders. That's like the most general thing, right? We have different areas of expertise, and that still will continue to be true, but we're really all here because we're trying to work together to build something. And if we can use these tools at our disposal to help us get to building the thing that we want for customers better and faster, we should do that. And we shouldn't be like, oh, but I'm a designer, so I can't do code. So or is there someone else who's a marketer? So like I'm gonna have to talk to them instead of just doing the thing. I think we can all roll up our sleeves and get to doing a lot more. And I'm very excited about that. And I think you see that in the way that Perplexity arranges its teams, right? There's a lot more smaller pods, right? It's not like, hey, we need like 6 roles and everyone's there. It's like there's just 2 or 3 people who are kind of just building this thing end to end. And yes, the 2 people are still designing in a way where they complement each other's skills. But it's not like there's some rule that like you have to have 1 of A and 2 of B and like a dash of C in order to get a product. It's like just 2 people can go, and if they can utilize all of these different tools and they can just create something end to end and do that, then go and do that, right? Like try to keep teams to almost the smallest amount that you need because it's just going to be more efficient. And I think everybody will feel even that greater sense of empowerment and ownership.
I think that's great. I do think you see the blurring. I mean, anytime anyone's like, oh, I can't do X because I'm a Y, that's just, it's kind of limiting, self-limiting kind of thinking anyway. And I think that, so it's more like hats that people wear instead of like, you are this role. It's like, okay, or it's like, you've got multiple skills,
Yes.
It's like, okay, being like multiple skills. And I think that you're right that it is enabling people that don't have the craft to operate in areas where they don't have the deep craft.
Yes.
And it's almost like binary, like now they can do something they couldn't do before. And like,
That's right.
So vibe prototyping, we talk about, I used to always talk about like the design gap at many startups and on many teams where there's no designer. So as much as they want to do a prototype, PM, maybe they do balsamic or something. Yeah. Front-end engineer can't really do it. So they just don't do a product, high fidelity prototype or mock-up. But now you can do it, right?
Yeah, you can.
So.
But I also think there's like a mindset thing too, which is like sometimes if I know that like I'm in a team and you're a data scientist and I have a data question, even if I could do it, there's some part of me that's like, well, that's Dan's job. So let me just give him the question. So I think we have to rewire a little bit of that instinct as well, if that makes sense.
It does. I think it's interesting. It really, I would take another angle at it, which is self-sufficiency.
Yes.
And I saw this in the hackathon, actually. Just, what was hilarious is I'm like, all right, we did our PRD, go. Yeah. And a small number of people had their PRD, and they had the empty prompt box, and they were like, I'm like, copy, paste, go. But that was a hesitation of like, I don't, or then they did it, and they would get stuck. And it's like, and as we all know, I've been calling it the vibe coding debug death loop. It's like, oh yeah, I fixed it. Oh yeah, I fixed it. You're like, kill me now, right? Like you have to have persistence and self-sufficiency. I mean,
and you just have to sometimes yes, there may be, because like, I'm sure you guys are in teams, or there's like a certain structure, and there are different people with different roles, but you just sometimes have to be the one to be like, okay, yes, I could go to this person and do it, and I know they're good at it. They'll probably do it way faster than me and probably better quality, but in this era, I would also learn something, right? I would maybe benefit myself by just taking a stab at, spending a little bit of time on R&D, or utilizing all the tools that you flash on the screen and just becoming more proficient. And I guarantee you, the first time it's going to be way slower.
Yeah.
And it's not going to be as, it's probably going to be sucky, and you're like, oh, like it would have been so much easier if I went to Dan. But if you actually go at it and you spend time and you get, because tools also, all of these AI tools, we have to learn and we have to get better at, and we have to, there's a skill to using the tool well. Eventually, I think we'll just allow ourselves to be more and more powerful.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think it makes a lot of sense. Cool. And then one of the things you and I talked about was my mental model is like for any skill, PM, and we can double click on, okay, discovery or whatever, prioritization or visual design or whatever. There's like a bell curve distribution, like for height and weight and everything else pretty much, right? And so the way I think about it is like, AI is now somebody who like would be at the bottom of the bell curve. Now AI can just at least get them to like the bottom 25% all of a sudden. Right? Jump them right to there. Like, yes, it's not going to be the world's best code or the world's best design, but it's going to be better than like the bottom 10, 15% of people in that field. I don't know.
For sure. And I mean, even if, because it could be very well paced. You come in and you're like, hey, Julie, we're going to work on this feature. And you know what? I just designed this thing. And it's likely my instinct will be like, okay, Dan, that's not very good. Like you should have just let me and that's the thing. Like we're just so used to that kind of dynamic and that pattern. But what I hope, like if I can catch myself in that moment, I'll be like, well, it's actually, sure, okay, this particular example, it could be a lot better and I could help him do that. But like maybe if I can spend time with you on like, how do I help you develop the eye? Because the most important thing is if you develop the eye, then your work that you use with the tools will become better and better, right? So a lot of times, like I think we're limited by our understanding of what does good look like.
Yes.
Not necessarily, and because like the eye and the hand, I always think of it as like they're two dimensions. It's like I could have a better articulation of what good looks like and not still be able to like, like for example, I can appreciate great painting, but I might not be like a great at actually painting myself. But the important thing, I think, especially if you're working with other people around you who are using these tools, is what can you do to help them develop their eye? And I think it helps us do that because then, if we surround ourselves with more and more capable people, then our team will be able to just accomplish more together. And I think we have to also have faith that, like, look, it's not like a zero-sum game. Like, it's not like there's only this much work. So if like Dan gets better and takes on more, then there was like less work for me to do. It's like I could do the same thing, right? I could be expanding my skills as a marketer, as like a researcher, as an engineer, as like a an analyst. And so I could also be, and the more all of us become better, it's like then yeah, we can be far more ambitious with our plans and what we could build together.
Yeah, and I think AI is enabling that. I think when I think through my career, I've seen some of the best people, they don't stay in their lane. They intentionally learn about the adjacent functions, like designers that learn about PM and front-end coding, and PMs that learn about designer, right? Or engineers that learn about design. So, and it's interesting that the latest term is like super IC. Like, oh, it's a super, back to your thing, right? I'm a super IC.
Yeah.
And I think that's great. And I think that it's more prevalent now. It's more empowered and enabled by AI. But some of the strongest people in the field have always kind of been acting like super ICs. I don't know.
Yeah, and it really is, it's more like a mindset shift, right? And go back to like, that's why we kind of have to break the old patterns. Like we got to be very intentional about like, look, that's how we worked. Yes, that was comfortable, that worked, but like we're in a different era. The tools are different. The world is changing. And like we kind of have to push ourselves and push everyone around us to evolve.
So I agree with you. I think it's going to lead to smaller teams. The other thing is I think it's going to lead to less management levels. I've had several people at this meetup at some of our AI events go, you know what? I'm tired of being a director at this big company. I just want to go be that super IC sounds great, Dan. I want to be a super IC at a smaller startup. Like people are seeking that, right? To get back to that connection with building as opposed to they've lost, right? So cool.
I think again, management is like, it's one of the things, right? Because maybe, with tools, we all get better at managing ourselves and, resolving conflicts and all of this other stuff with everyone else. It's like maybe the task of management doesn't have to become as all-encompassing, and I think it's awesome for managers to like roll up their sleeves and actually get back to connecting with doing some IC work.
Cool. Well, AI is new, the chat UI is new, you're an expert in design. What are you kind of seeing as like state of the art for like these AI interfaces or chat interfaces?
Yeah, I think it's still really early right now. Now, I do think that it's a huge paradigm shift forward that we were able to use conversational interfaces. Like I think that in of itself is like a much easier way of allowing people to engage with questions, because the easiest thing is like just talking and using language, which we've all learned to do since we were 1.5 or 2 years old. So I think that the conversation, because actually the interesting story is like GPT, the models were around, and everyone's like, okay, cool, no big deal, whatever, it's very technical. And then they like put it into this UI, this like conversational chat UI, and suddenly it blew up. And so again, the thing it wasn't like the technology suddenly dropped overnight and everyone discovered it. It was like, no, the technology was around, but the interface was really what allowed people to start to access the value of the model. And so I do think that was a huge leap forward. And now I think you see conversational chat phases for everything. And now I almost feel like we're a little bit too much on that other side. We're like, guys, this is not the end all and be all. Like, I think conversational interfaces are awesome for the things that are better expressed via words. And so obviously if I don't have the wonderful thing is I don't have to learn some, like, how do I use this UI? And like, which selectors do I have to, like, what buttons do I have to press to like get something to happen? And I think it's perfect for something like code, because code is the ultimate, thing where you have to like learn a completely new language in order to know how to do anything in that language. And so I think about a lot of the power of what we're seeing with this technology as like the power of translation. Right, it's like translator. So again, if I don't know how to speak a language, whether it's Python or whether it's French, then this conversational interface is like perfect. I can talk to someone who speaks my language, and then they can kind of translate it into this other format. And so I think that it does that really, really well. But it doesn't, I think we see its limitations as well in things that really aren't easily expressed with words. So for example, in design, I haven't really found any tool that I think has really made it that easy. Now, again, I think it's awesome to start with something. It's like, I'm thinking about an app or I'm looking for an interface. But really, when you're talking about visuals or images, like, you think about like, how do designers operate? Like, they operate with mood boards. They operate with like visuals and like colors and texture palettes, and then they put it in front of them, and then they like use that to inspire them to do something. And so often, when you use like a tool, like you'll get an image, right? But then it's very, very hard to tweak a particular element of that image. And so even if you like make an app and you're like, I love everything about it, but I just wish this button was like, this like theme was purple instead of blue, it can be very hard to kind of actually direct the interface to do that. Or if you're like, but I want the button radius to be like, 10 pixels instead of like 2 pixels. It's so annoying to have to like type make the button radius 2 pixels instead of
is.
whatever. And what you want is like direct manipulation. And so I think that what we really want is like some instances where we're high level and we want to give like the direction and then it does something, but then we want like greater tools for refinement. And sometimes we want to directly manipulate the thing that allows us to do that. And again, I think we see that paradigm work a little better with code. Like with Cursor, yes, you have the prompt, the text field that you type into and it creates it, but you can still go back to the code and you can edit and modify specific pieces. So you have that granular control as well as like the high level control. I just think that we need to see that for a lot of other modes of interacting, right? Whether with visuals. I also think voice is going to be very, very interesting. I think right now it's, you can do certain things with it, but in terms of like, if you think about it, oftentimes many of us can communicate much more freely and expressively and quickly by speaking rather than even typing. And I certainly think that the idea of like us being able to use voice and do more and have things operate more efficiently is something that I'm also very excited about.
I was thinking about that as you were talking because I'm like, right now you're typing. Has anyone here used Whisperflow? Yeah, right. So there are these, and it's you to your point, you can speak faster than you can type. So I've been using a lot more lately. And then the other popular tool, Granola. Anyone using Granola here?
Yeah, it's great.
Like it's revolutionized my note taking now, right? So it's yeah. So I agree with you on that. And I do think visual is its own modality, and so that's why, you can go in these vibe coding tools and say, build me an app. It has to pick some default UI, and if you leave it to chance, it's not going to be good, as we know. And so, like, the best people still recommend, hey, feed it a wireframe at least, or feed it this. The one thing I will say to your point is more and more of them now offer direct manipulation. So you can click on something, you can click the element,
getting better,
and then you can go, or you can change the class, or what. It's like, it's getting better, but it is painful to be like, to be specifying CSS properties and HTML elements in writing, right? And saying, change this. It's very painful. So.
It is very painful.
Yeah, I guess there's a room for a big breakthrough there. We'll see. Cool.
I also have a lot to say about like onboarding experiences. I think because everyone's like, oh, it's a chat interface, you just talk to it.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of products don't do a great job of actually helping you do a better job using the tool. Like you go to all of these even vibe coding tools and there's just like this text box. It's like, just write what do you want to create?
Right.
And I don't think they're like, what would make your thing turn out better if you first like start by saying what the goal is and then like, even sort of like give us 3 screenshots of like things that the style it should look similar to, and just kind of must direct you a little bit more into how you even engage with this text box.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I'm thinking now too, like there still is no tool, and I think this, so back to the bell curve analogy. If we just look at like product management, design, and development and say, okay, for which of those functions has like more of the bell curve floor been lifted? I think it's engineering, right? It's like, especially front-end coding. It is tech. Somebody, back to I love your translator analogy. Someone said, hey, the best programming language is human text. Like it's normal like text, right? So I think that's the one where it's the highest, like maybe you get to, 30%. And then I think design is the one that's the least, because you still can't, there's no tool you can go and give it a non-visual prompt and have it create a good UI that I'm aware of.
Right. Or I think for a lot of designers at more established companies where it's like you can give it, here's my design, brand assets, is like our components, and just use what we have already to create things. That's very tough. And so if it just generates a completely new thing, you're like, well, I can't really use that because I'm trying to make it fit into, more cohesive app structure.
Right. And that's the other thing. Like, vibe coding stuff is great when you're starting from scratch and you have no constraints, no design constraints, no code constraints. But I will say the ones on the left side, the reason they're kind of designer friendly is they actually, at least 2 of them actually let you import your existing design system.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, I think they're realizing that. Then the flip side, we can be like, what percentage of people actually have a design system? That's another. They should, you should, but you don't, right?
Or help you generate your design system.
Yes.
I mean, that would be amazing.
That would be super cool.
It's like give it a couple screens, like just generate the system.
And imagine if it was like this cool inspectable library, and you can go and change it there, and then it globally changed it everywhere. That'll be there in a couple of years, hopefully. Yeah. Anyway, cool. Okay, so let's switch over to more of the PM world. There's a lot of debate now. There's some, controversial tweets and posts. Do PRDs still matter these days or not?
I mean, how do you define a PRD?
Yeah, it's funny because I was talking to some progress. PRDs were kind of like, if you look at the Google Trends map, they were going down. People were like, we don't do PRDs anymore. Like when I actually started my product career here, you would like pride yourself on how long your PRD was that nobody was going to read, right? It's like, okay, the last one was 20 pages, mine's 25 pages, right? But it's like the catch-all of the semi-structured information that you feed into the chat, right? Like, who's the customer? What are the problems? What are the features? That kind of stuff, right?
Yeah. And so I go back to like the spirit of what is a good PRD is clarity about what it is that we're building and, what are all of the use cases you should take care of, or what are the edge cases and what should happen in this, and what like success looks like and who is it for, and like what should happen it's just clarity. We're trying to figure out how to make something really, really clear. And I think when people say it's dying, what I usually take it to mean is like the instantiation of that is the 25-page doc that gets passed around may no longer be the best way to express that. Maybe the best way to express clarity is now you're gonna show them like a prototype of what the thing is, and if everyone sees a prototype and we know exactly how it works, then like that's clarity. But then it goes back to like, well, how do you create the prototype?
The thing. The PRD was dying, and now it's back as a simplified version.
So now
it's a prompt.
Yeah,
basically
so now
a long prompt.
I'm vibe code the prototype. I have to like.
Exactly.
Or tell the AI how to build it, and isn't that just the same spirit of what the PRD is?
It's like no PRDs all the way down. Like if you go down that way. That's what I love. Somebody tweeted, they said like, hey, on our team we get away with for your PRDs. We just vibe prototype, and that's the spec. I'm like, great. What do you type in to get the vibe prototype? Like
yes.
I mean,
there has to be thinking.
The thinking.
The thinking is still what it is.
Yes. Well, let's do a quick aside on that. So, when we've had past panels, people said, is AI making us dumber, or is AI making us not think as much? And kind of the analogy was like spell checkers, like, the number of people that can spell. So I don't know. What do you think about, is it like leading people to take shortcuts and not think as much, or?
I think it's a mentality thing. So I think if you're just interested in building stuff and you're using AI to build things, then you're probably thinking, because you have to think about like what you're building and like, did this build the thing that you like? As long as you're using your brain to judge and evaluate and to try and do a better job than what you were doing before, then I think it's probably helping you, because you're like still you're still utilizing that. I do think if it gets to a point where like I'm a student, I've got to do some work that my professor assigned me, and I'm really not that into like reading whatever Hamlet, and I just want to turn in the assignment so I can get an A, then I think that use case, you already have people who weren't that engaged, and maybe they did it because they had to, and they were kind of forced to in this structure because they wanted that A, and now you give them this like very tempting thing, and it's like, well, like, yeah, like I'm sure many of them are like, well, I'm just going to feed them the essay that ChatGPT gave me. And I do think that maybe people in that case may lose out on an instantiation of where they might have otherwise been thinking.
Got it.
But I think it goes back to like, look, we have more and more choices available to us, and it is our choice if we want to use it to take on a challenging thing and make something out of nothing and pursue or learn something that we didn't know, and now we have excellent tools to do that. But that was true even before AI. Like that was true in the internet era. It kind of got to the place where I remember I learned this after talking to and spending some time with people at Khan Academy. And you guys familiar with Khan Academy? Is the idea was like we can put these really, really high quality lessons about math and everything from K through 12 on the internet, and then everybody who has access to the internet will just have access to this high quality education. And so more or less they did that, but it hasn't really led to the outcome where now like everyone everywhere in the world is, and the main reason, I remember one of the, I think it's product managers there was telling me that like it led to the people who were already very invested in education,
Doubling down.
getting more out of it, right? So like families that are already like really into teaching their kids will now like sit their kids in front and like, they get ahead in math. But the people who just weren't motivated, it's like they didn't use it.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't like an access problem. I think it's more of a motivation problem. And I do worry about that, actually. I worry about the motivation problem. Like I worry that, as these things become more and more convenient, people find less and less reason to maybe be motivated to go and do a hard thing for themselves. And I wrote an essay about this, but I kind of like, in the title of the essay was like, Our Souls Need Proof of Work. Because I fundamentally do believe that if we want to feel, satisfied or fulfilled, we have to do some hard things. Like we have to push ourselves just for us, right? Not even for any external reward, money, whatever. Just for our own satisfaction and fulfillment and meaning. Like we have to put ourselves out there. We have to take some risks. We have to do things that we might fail in. And it's only by doing that I think you learn your own strength and you learn what you're capable of and you become proud of yourself and you kind of become the person that you're meant to be. But I think if you always opt out of doing it because you can and it's convenient, then I actually think the person that hurts the most is probably, the self.
Yeah. No. And when I was asking about that, I was thinking of motivation, like basically like the high motivation use cases, you'll still think, and the low motivation use cases, you'll take the shortcut, I guess, right? So, yeah. All right. Well, that kind of leads also to a good topic of trust with AI, right? So I know, actually, along those lines, there's that new hot startup that's like helping you cheat on things.
Cluely?
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Cluely. So trust is obviously important. So I think you've thought about how to build trust with AI. If you want to share some advice there.
Yeah. It's interesting because as AI gets better, and obviously we're seeing new models come out every 6 months or every year. I do think this is shifting because in the beginning with like ChatGPT 3, I think it used to be wrong about a lot more stuff, and people would be a lot more skeptical. And then every generation has gotten smarter in things, but yet it still makes mistakes. I know when ChatGPT 5 launched, a few weeks ago, people were very quick to point out that there's still like a bunch of simple math problems. Like if you frame it in a particular way, it'll still get it wrong. And so, my startup, Sundial, works in data. And like that's a use case where like nobody wants you to be wrong, like ever, about data. If someone's like, what's my ARR? Like they do not want even 1 out of 100 times for that to just hallucinate and give like a number that is incorrect. And so I just feel like that's, the context really matters in terms of what we can trust. And I think in very, very important and situations where like you really can't be wrong, we probably still have to resort to like using deterministic algorithms. And then there's cases in which like for example, I think images or text are great examples because there's not like one right way to say something, right? Or like one right way to show a picture of a bunny. And so in those cases, a little bit of that variation can be helpful. And even like, we like it because it's like more creative, it's more intriguing or whatnot. So I think we always have to look at like, what is the context we're in? And actually I think it's probably, every company is doing this to some degree, but it's like trying to figure out like, where do we draw the boundaries of what can the LLM technology do? And what is like, like especially in software, like what does traditional engineering and coding and deterministic algorithms do? And where do we even use like machine learning, which is like another like probabilistic model that's like different from the generative models. And it's like, where do we draw the lines? And even with every generation of better LLMs models coming out, I think we have to redraw the lines and to kind of figure out how that will evolve. I do think one thing that LLMs do not do a very good job of is they don't really have what I call like self-awareness. And so it would be wonderful, I think, if like, you could ask it like, hey, what is the answer? And they're like, well, 90% accuracy that it's this, or like 99% accuracy. Like, I think that would be very helpful,
Nice.
And if you asked it, like, can you reflect, do you think you're right or wrong? That it would actually give you what is like a reasonable probabilistic, but it just doesn't do that. Like, if you're like, hey, like, this is the answer, you're absolutely right. And you're like, are you sure? And they're like, it like sort of thinks you think it might be wrong, so then it like
Pleases
says what
you.
you it's like,
Pleases you, yeah.
oh no, you're right, I'm probably wrong, but like it doesn't actually have like a
Right.
a real sense of
Yeah.
like of self, right?
Yeah.
And I find that really annoying, and I think if it
I
did,
do
it
too.
would make our lives a lot
I know.
easier, but it just doesn't work like that.
I've been vibe coding, and it just simple things. Like it always assumes it's in the right directory, right? It's
Yes.
like I'm like git commit,
yes, that
git
particular one,
commit, and
yes.
it's like there's no repository here. I'm like, dude, we just did the repository 5 minutes ago. Of course, there's a repository, you know, like, and it's just but it's so confident. It's like
Yes.
I'll CD and I'll do it, and it's like well, why don't you just? I'll just put. I mean, check your do PWD. Just PW. Check. It's like it just jumps off the cliff without even like just check, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, how hard can it be to just be like,
Yeah.
before you do something, just check.
Yeah.
You know, and then it also after the fact, okay, the bug has been fixed. Everything should be working just
Yeah,
fine.
just fine. Yeah.
You know, it's like I picture this like intern person, like
Yeah.
who's super, super chipper pleasing, but kind of competent, but 10% of the time incompetent, right? It's like, yeah,
See,
right.
that's what I was about to, like, I wouldn't even mind all the as long as it was self-aware about
Yeah,
it.
exactly. Yeah. Anyway, yeah. So, and I think you brought up a good thing, which is a good point, which is in any different product category or market category, the level of tolerable risk varies and or level of required accuracy varies. And so I think that because of the fundamental probabilistic nature of these tools, you know, basically, yeah, you want a temperature 0 on some of those things. You don't want any variability on some of these things. So I think there are certain verticals like medicine, maybe insurance or finance. Like, I think somebody tried to have one manage his portfolio and like it lost all the money in like a week or two, right? Because all it takes is one boo-boo, and you're like, oops, right? So I think that in certain industries, you're going to see much later adoption, and in other industries, I don't know, just based on that.
I think that there are design ways to solve it. Like, for example, one of the things, so our product Sundial is trying to automate data analysis. So I know there wasn't that many people who were data scientists in the audience, but the idea, like I sometimes describe it as like it's cursor for data analysis.
Oh, cool.
Because what we're trying to do is take raw data and then give you an actual story or a report. You know, just like a really good data scientist is able to like sift through all the noise and find like what is the thing to pay attention to and how, like, what's the story of what's happening, like with, you know, revenue went down, why is that, right? And like kind of construct a story. We're trying to do that in an automated way. And the thing is, though, we realize very early on that like, okay, well, if we're going to pull any numbers, again, it's got to be right. So we're just going to do that with like, it's going to be our tool calls,
code,
right? It's going to be just like our tool calls. And if we're going to write an algorithm, we're also just going to execute the algorithm in, you know, the same way every single time. But what the AI does really well is it kind of can create the narrative and the story, right? So we're back to like, it's good at text, and it's much better because we actually started this company before Gen AI was a big thing, and we actually tried to deterministically write these headlines, you know, and it was like, if this, then write that, and then if, and then it was just immediately became clear to us that this was like just English, the language is like not solvable deterministically.
Like an infinite choose your own adventure in there.
Exactly. And so when the LM technology came, we're like, oh my gosh, like we were looking for this, for that particular use case of like writing the report and the narrative. But we're also using it internally for a lot of things where, you know, we have like human oversight. So I think that AI can do that as well, right? It can do a first pass at a lot of stuff. And then it can ask a person to, like, can you check this? And like, does that seem right? Or like, you know, and just do a pass. And then the person can still, you know, put their stamp on it. Because the way that I see it, like, if you look at the role that data analysts or data scientists play in an organization, often they are who the rest of the organization trusts to interpret the data, right? So we're not all looking at the data ourselves often. You know, if you're a product manager or you're like a business lead or whatnot, like you're just trusting that this person, when they said that, you know, revenue is down because we had like fewer subscribers last month, you just kind of trust them. And you just kind of trust them.
Every time.
Yeah. And so we often think like, okay, well, probably our product still needs to earn the stamp of approval of the analyst at the company. Like the analyst will probably have to bless our product and say, hey, Sundial's awesome, Dan, you should go use it, and then you'll use it, right? So like we have to make it easy for that person to evaluate the work and make sure that there's transparency in how things are being calculated so that they can feel good about it, so that they can, recommend it to other people so that other people will trust whatever answer is coming out of that. And so I just think that, the world operates on trust. We very rarely are the ones who get to examine everything from a first principles lens. Like we just sort of believe what people around us say, and obviously we evaluate whether we trust that person. But I think that that's kind of similar to, if you guys are all building products with AI, like I think that's one of the lenses that we can put onto like what will it be like for us to try and create products that humans can trust.
And I think, if people that are versed in probabilistic thinking, your idea of give me a confidence interval is just like, that's just common sense. Like, don't assume it's like black or white. Yes, this is the right answer. Like, give me some confidence interval. I think that makes a lot of sense. Although you have identified a use case where hallucinations are a feature, not a bug. If I do miss my revenue OKRs, I wanted to make up a funny story, a good story that gets me off the hook for why that happened. That would
At least make the room laugh.
Yeah.
While you're going through the review process.
There you go. And now we're getting, and I do think that a lot of people, yes, they're using AI, but they call it human in the loop. They're still keeping a human in the loop so that like, it's not just the fire and forget whatever the AI says, right?
Yeah.
So.
But yeah, it could still make humans' lives much easier.
Yeah, no, totally.
Yeah.
And that gets to maybe the last point we'll cover before we go to Q&A, which is, as this progresses, what is AI and machines going to do, and like what's going to be left for humans to do, right? A lot of people think that we're not going to be doing much of anything. So what are your thoughts on that?
I think that's a really big question, and I look at, for example, the story of what's it called? Was it AlphaGo or AlphaGo? It was like 1997 or 98 maybe. Actually, I can't remember. I'm really bad with dates. But there was a year where Magnus Carlsen played, IBM's machine and lost, and he's like devastated. Everyone's like, "Oh my God, like humans are not as good at chess. Like nobody will ever play chess again because we always thought that we're the best at it." And then it turns out like chess is more popular than ever, right? I think like there's a
Queen's Gambit helped,
yeah. I think it did, but like chess.com like published it, and it's like now there's like hundreds of millions of users, so it's become far more popular than it ever was. And we're all fine. Like we all still love playing chess and doing things, even if like a machine can do it better than us. And I just think a lot of things, like going back to the, our souls need proof of work, like a lot of it is just for us. Like we can I can still feel proud if I play you in chess and I beat you, right? I can still be proud if like I get better and better and I can take on better opponents. Like even if, I know that there's clearly humans, but also machines that's better than us in the world. And so I think that that's like one thing that for us to keep in mind is that, sure, there might be machines that will do the thing better, but we're the ones who get to take pleasure out of sometimes taking on these challenges for ourselves, and that there will always be room for us to do that. And I think that's, we saw that even like marathon running is increasing. Like every, kind of extreme type of sport or like kind of like people are just doing more because we have more leisure time. And a lot of what people want to do in those leisure times is like go and do something hard and get better at that thing that's hard. And I think for many of us who are blessed to have interesting jobs that we like the job has been, a forum for us to go and do that hard thing and to get better at a particular skill and to derive some satisfaction and pleasure and meaning from doing that. I think that'll continue to be the case. I think the second thing is that no matter how good AI gets, like I think you can, of course, in the best case scenario, okay, you have like super intelligence and you can give it a problem. Okay, we don't want anyone else to die from cancer. We don't want, any more car accidents. We don't want this. And maybe they can just figure it out, right? They can go out and they can execute, they can do it all, and we don't have that problem. I still think it's a big question, like, what are our problems? Like, what does a good world look like? Like the questions of values are always human questions.
You need a PRD for that.
Yeah, like you really do. Like it's hard. It's like even if you go out there and you're like, for example, like you're running these vibe coding workshops. Like people have to figure out like what do they want to build.
Right. No. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And like it's you really can't outsource like some of the most fundamental questions, which is like, what do you want to do?
Right.
What does a good life look like? What does a good society look like for us? Like, what are the trade-offs that we're willing to make for one value versus another? And I think those are actually the things that are most core and most human for all of us. And I don't really see how, unless the super intelligence, it just enslaves us and then we become like in the matrix, like I still feel like we're gonna have to grapple with these questions.
Well, even in the matrix, you have your goal that you don't know, so you still have goals.
I mean,
and stuff,
they just made it so that
exactly.
we still felt like we had free
And
will.
it's going to be so smart. It'll trick us like that.
Exactly.
It won't let us know that we're enslaved, right?
I mean, we might already, we might already be in a simulation.
Living in a simulation. Exactly. Cool. Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Julie. It was great to hear from your thoughts. Please join me in giving a welcome here.
Thank you.
And then we'll switch to Q&A. So the way it works here, because we are recording, you can't ask a question unless you have a mic. So we have mic runners. So hold up your hand if you would like to ask Julie a question. I will also look at Slido and try to look on Slack while we're here. There you go, George. I'll give you, here, Julia. Thank you. There you go.
Real quick. Hello.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hi.
So, what have you learned about managing yourself through managing others?
In recent years, I have been working at a startup and being an entrepreneur and growing like in a very 0 to 1 phase. And I think that it was very different for me in compared to working at Meta where I was before. And I think one of the biggest things is it brought me more into this question of like, what should the culture of our company be? And I always find that culture is like a reflection of the founders' personalities or what they believe. And I know Brian Chesky has talked a lot about like founder mode. And like, I've thought a lot about like, what does that mean? And what I take founder mode to mean is like, it's the values of the founder when they're at their best. So again, it's not always how they behave. It's not like what they say goes. It's if I think about what, my co-founder Chandra and I, like, what are we like at our best? That is what I would love the culture of the company to be. And then I had to ask myself, well, what is that? Like, what is it? What am I at my best? And like took a lot of, like 360 feedback. And I think whenever you're running a company, you get a lot more feedback from everyone in like every single direction. And so that was, I think, very, very helpful for me to try and crystallize what it is that I really cared about. And I realized like I'm a person who cares a lot more about the way things are done and the process of things. Like I care about outcomes, but I almost feel like I maybe orient a little bit more towards like how we do things, because I think I implicitly believe that will influence what the long-term outcomes will be. So I realize that I care a lot about that. I think the second thing that I learned about myself in terms of managing a company is this idea of conviction. In fact, I just wrote an essay about that, which I published today, which is I feel like the only thing that really kills startups is when you lose conviction. Right? Nothing else is actually a real killer. Like if you get rejected, or if a customer says your product sucks, or if somebody quits on you, or maybe you weren't able to get that money, or a VC says no, like none of those are actual killers in of themselves. What they do is sometimes they can chip away at your belief that this thing is possible. Because whenever you start something, you always start by saying, of course I could do it, right? I can do it. Like, it could be hard, I'm gonna probably face some roadmaps, but I think I could do it. Because if you didn't believe you could do it, you wouldn't have started. And so for me, the process of like actually going and doing this startup is like, I started with a lot of conviction, my co-founder and I, and along the way, all of these little things test us, right? Every rejection tests us. A customer being like, this product's not as good as I thought it was, as you guys made it out to sound. Like each of these is like a thing that might chip a little bit off that conviction, but then I have to kind of play this game of like, how do I keep the conviction alive? And it's kind of like a mind game. Like every day, like what is it that I can believe, and how much can I keep that fire of belief going? Because if it keeps on burning forever, then I think we can keep doing this forever. And eventually I believe that it'll lead somewhere. But the true killer, the thing that I'm always most concerned about is like if conviction dies. And so I think a lot of it is just like, I've learned a lot about like, what is it that makes me believe? Yeah.
Since you brought up founder mode, I just want to chime in on that. So it's funny because it's like 2 words, founder mode. This is what always happens, whether it's MVP or someone's getting it with me on vibe coding on LinkedIn the other day. Like people read into that. It's like founder mode. It means you're God. You can come in and do whatever you want. Like you can blow things up. Like my take on founder mode is it's meant to be the opposite of what naturally happens as company grows and get big and bureaucratic, that the people at the top lose touch with what's going on, which is exactly what we were talking about earlier about like managers getting more hands-on, rolling up their sleeves. So that's what I view it as. And I've worked in companies where even though people are senior leaders, they are still in touch with the details, or they're in a meeting and they can ask the probing questions to go down, right? So I don't know, that's my take on it. So, all right.
Hi, my name is Zhuo, and my question for you is, with AI PM becoming a more prevalent job, especially in this age, what advice would you have for young professionals with the traditional AI background with PM?
Do you mean professionals who are PMs?
So basically with like younger like professionals such as myself who have background like AI and PM, but now there's roles that are actually like artificial intelligence product managers.
So it's a question more like, how do we stay relevant?
Well, how do like younger professionals adapt? What advice would you share for them?
I mean, I think similar to what I said before, I think if you think of yourself as like, I'm a builder, I just want to build some cool stuff. Like what is getting in the way of me being able to realize the vision of things I want to build? And then, if like the blocker is, I don't think I have like access, like I don't really know how to get a great user experience, then like, okay, cool, like work on that, right? Work on that so that it blocks you from being able, or if your thing is like, I don't know how to realize this in production code, then figure out like if there's better tools or how you can learn, or and again, you may still have to like pair with people, still humans, because I don't think AI is good enough yet at a lot of these things to fully replace humans. But if your goal is like, so oftentimes the product management goal is just, you want to deliver the thing, right? You want to ship the thing and you want the thing to have like an outcome for humans. The product management role is almost like the amalgamation of just trying to make sure everyone else does their thing. But if everyone else doing their thing means you just get better at using tools to take on all of these other skill sets, I think it's going to make you far more powerful in the goal of reaching the thing that you want to build.
Thank you.
All right, we have a top voted question from Slido. 6 votes coming in. How does this technology change product discovery?
Product discovery, as in, how do people how do customers learn about your product?
No, like how do you as a product team do discovery on your customers or needs in the market? Like how does that change or get better with AI?
I see. Yeah. Well, there's actually a lot of tools, I think, in that space as well, like tools that help make it much easier to do a user interview, or you do a user interview and it automatically analyzes it, or you give it like a bunch of footage of users using the thing and it like learns about what it is. Like I'm actually quite excited about this, because to me it's like, I'm kind of a data geek, so it's like getting easier and easier for all of us to have more access to data. And I think in a data world, I think of data very, very holistically, right? So I think of like qualitative data, like what do users say? And when you interview them, what do they tell you they like? And when you ask them to rate your app and how many stars they give, like that's all more qualitative, but that's data. And then there's stuff that like, well, what do they click on? How many minutes are they spending on each part of your app or your site? Like that's like quantitative data, but it's all data. And the difference in the past used to be that a lot of qualitative data was hard to collect at scale, right? Because you'd have to talk to the user, and a researcher would have to do the interview, and then and it takes a long time to do like 25 interviews, and then they would have to like use their judgment to try and figure out like what what is the key things that are coming in. Now I think we can do that at scale with AI. So I actually think we should get a whole much wider range of like qualitative signals, to the point where like over time, if you just like maybe there's a camera and like you're watching someone, you can like study where their eye movements are and what they're looking at, or like what their expression is, or and that could just be many more rich dimensions of data, which helps us get a better idea of what it is that people care about.
Yeah, I think you're seeing I think it's still early days, but like imagine, to your point, if there's a transcription of all the user interviews and you can just go in and say, oh, this one interview complained about this page, and then you type that in, and it pulls up all the clips that have that phrase in it, and you can quickly pull those together into like a highlight reel to share with other people or something. Like that's, I think, what like Dovetail and some other tools are making possible now. But yeah.
It also reminds me of another thing, which our company is also very, very interested in, which is, now that we have conversational interfaces are actually quite hard to analyze, right? It used to be, you would know what, like if someone goes to Google, you'd be like, oh, they want an image because they clicked on Google Images, or they want maps because they clicked on maps, or they want shopping because they clicked, right? Now we can't measure clicks anymore. You talk to ChatGPT and you just ask it a different question, and how do we know if you're talking about shopping or images or like directions or whatever it is? And so it's like a new kind of analysis. And of course we have to use AI, first to try and bucket and sort, but then to actually understand, because one of the common questions I'm sure if I worked on ChatGPT is like, what use cases are growing?
Totally. That's why they have the thumbs up, thumbs down. Now we know why they have it, because they have like one of their few, the rough feedback mechanisms. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, I think something you said really resonated, which is onboarding and user training in this world. And like you said, chat is actually, it's just the beginning. It's not sufficient. Any best practices you have for that? And I ask because I work at the startup Reka AI, where we're kind of building one of the products we have is like a cursor for video editing. Like you take an unedited video, you prompt to edit it, but then you have to train a user. There are certain kinds of prompts you can write to do, like edit it certain way. And there's a bunch of training that goes into it, but you also don't want to write a document telling you, write these prompts, don't write. Like what are some, I've seen suggested prompts. That's what we used to do at Meta as well. But like anything else you've seen?
Well, I do think, right now, I think a lot of people who are using AI are like early adopter audiences. And so many of them, just early adopters, like just want to try to think, like, don't make me read a bunch of stuff. Don't make me click through like 20 pages of onboarding. I just want to try the thing. So it kind of makes sense why these products are like that. But I actually think that what would be really cool is like you let people do that. But then after they try their first thing, you ask them like, hey, do you want a little more guidance on how to structure this prompt or to figure out how to help you get the outcome that you want? Or maybe, even on that page, it's like here, like click here to see like some guidelines on how you might do a better job of giving instruction to the AI to get you the outcome that you wanted. So I just think that there's certain people for whom, like, if you say, look, these are the best tips and practices that we have for a great experience, they'll actually appreciate that and they'll learn from that.
And then maybe like you mentioned, like also have it in the output. Like, is this working for you? Do you want a little bit more guidance? And
yes, exactly. Or, they try their first thing, if it isn't good, and they try again, then in that case, maybe you say, okay, let me give you a template, like fill things out in this way, and you may get a better outcome.
I've also seen just lightweight user guides at the beginning. It's like, hey, like maybe you walk with it. Let's walk you through editing your first video. I just did it. Actually, Granola did it. Check out Granola's onboarding, because you have to like learn how to use the mic and do it. And it literally is like this video of the founder. He's like, okay, Nil's going to transcribe our meeting here. So you know what I mean? It's like a meta thing, but you take them through editing the first video and you teach them the most common ways to edit it. And then they know those. And you don't want to be too long and heavy-handed, but lightweight. There's some really, check out Granola's onboarding.
Yeah.
And then what I would say also is, what I find super useful is, like piggybacking on what Julie's saying is, say they do the first thing. That there's probably 3 or 4 common things that people want to do next that they forgot, they didn't know about. Like, just make those facets, expose those facets and say, would you like to now apply this filter? Would you like to, make it shorter? Would you like, what I mean? Like, you take a smart guess. You should be able to figure out from qualitative data what are the top things people want to do. And just you have little affordances right to the side to let you do it, right? So I don't have to know how to type. Anyway, so just some thoughts.
I like to see more templates. I think templates are underutilized right now in conversational AIs.
We're putting a lot of suggested prompts, kind of detailed templates, like just use, and we're actually seeing most people are lazy. They just pick a suggested prompt and run with it.
Yes.
But I think like kind of just having more and more affordances like that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hi. This is regarding the PRD prototype discussion. So, I read this and people are product managers creating prototypes and showing, doesn't that really cut short the discussion of what a solution should look like? because then once you see the prototype, people start reacting only to the prototype as opposed to really stepping back and thinking, okay, what are we trying to solve? Right?
So I do think you're absolutely right. I think there's a lot of things in a good PRD that you still want to make sure everyone's on the same page about. For example, the prototype doesn't answer who is this for, right? What's the target audience? And so you kind of still need to say that out loud and like, are we on the same page about that? And if people are not on the same page about that, they're just all going to evaluate the prototype differently because they've got a different bar. Because again, like if I think it's for power users and you think it's for like new users, like you're probably gonna be like, this thing sucks. Right. And we're just gonna be talking past each other. So there's certainly a lot of value to just like, even before that, just making sure we're all aligned on some of the bigger picture items.
I think you bring up a good point, and I would say like, honestly, even before AI, I think Figma contributed to this. Like when the thing is, the easier it is to create some high fidelity prototype as the first shot, or the more people want to do that as the first shot, then the less there's discussion of interaction, information architecture, navigation, design patterns, things like that. It's just like, here's this one, and like I think good teams do divergent thinking some, and they go, hey, there's 3 different ways we could approach this, right? And they spend time in a lower fidelity medium like wireframes or something. So, and unfortunately, I think vibe coding just has accelerated that now, because like not only now is it's not a high fidelity clickable prototype, it's actually working HTML, CSS, JavaScript now, and people just, in my book, I have the iceberg metaphor for UX design. The tip of the iceberg that everybody sees above the water is visual design. And so when people see it, I remember I had one CEO, our designer would create we would make these amazing HTML, CSS prototypes, and he would just be like, oh my gosh, and he'd fall in love with it. He'd want to ship that thing right now, right? Or he'd be like, what's this green? I don't like the green that you guys use. I'm like, are you serious? Who are the customers? Did we build the right features? Did we do the layout right? Right?
And if you take that, the role of engineering is cut short even further, right? Now you're coming and giving me the product and say, fill up the gaps, right? I did all the UI, you just look at, latency, performance, and things like that. Because when I used to run engineering, I did product management also, it really used to upset engineers when people come and tell them, just do this, right? Don't ask me any questions. Right. But
again, what's to say that engineer can't go and like also be the one to design the next thing? You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah, but I think, that's a second question I have is, why is chat is not much more prevalent? Because like for example, I go to my bank account, right? I still see the old pages and everything. And every time I go there, I have a different intent, right? But it shows me the same page.
Remember what I said about riskiness? The financial services people are going to be the last ones to adopt it because of the risk, right? They're not necessarily the first adopters of new technology waves anyway.
Would you want a chat interface? I think I do see some that have incorporated it.
Because whenever I go to Wells Fargo, I have a different intent, right? Sometimes I just want to go and see the check has been deposited, right? But it shows me the same page every time, right? Because, it shows me the front page with all the accounts I got to click through to find. But I thought, if you could ask me a question, then dynamically create the UI, that would be much better for me.
No, I agree. I think if there's a way to just chat Wells Fargo and it's like, hey, did that thing get deposited? And it just goes, yes.
Search your data, yeah. So would you want a little paperclip in the bottom right corner? Hey, it looks like you're trying to find a check today.
The only thing I realize is that, the information, as you said, sometimes it can be in a table, sometimes it can be a chart, but then it has to generate it dynamically, depending on what I want. So.
Yeah. And over time, I hopefully should get really good at personalizing. Like if you're like, I'm a tables person, because there are some people who are like that. And then it'll just show you dense tables.
There you go.
One of our investors was like a table person, and he always just wanted like all the data in like this very dense format. And then if you're a chart person, you'll get things more visual. Actually, I had one more thought about the prototype, which is that, right now we're assuming the prototype is just how the feature works, which I think is useful. But we can also get to a world in which maybe one day it's just really easy to create it's like a marketing video.
Yeah.
And the marketing video does a good job of talking about like, who is this for? And it's like maybe before you make the prototype, you make the marketing video and you get everyone on board. Like, is this the right marketing video? Is this the way we would talk about it? Is this the kind of audience we would be pitching it to? And then if you agree, then it's like, okay, then this is what it looks like.
Then you'll get the disconnect between the marketing video and the prototype. Like, this is amazing. I think that's called Kickstarter.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So the next top question from our friends on Slido, moving up, is Can you provide examples in typical enterprise workflows that would work better with AI in terms of efficiency? So I think they're focused on enterprise workflows. And they're saying, e.g., PMs could mock prototypes to verify faster. And they mean like in enterprise companies, like B2B companies, I guess. But.
Like what specific workflows? Any?
Like product-related workflows, like they're mentioning prototyping, for example, so to increase efficiency.
I think everything we talked about
discovery.
is like it's all relevant, whether it's in a
Prototype, vibe
B2B
coding.
or B2C environment.
Sounds like you should come to our Vibe Coding Hackathon September 17th and get your hands dirty. All right, cool. All right, let's go.
Hello. I'm going to stand up to honor you.
All right.
So, Julie, my name is Genevieve. I have been reading The Looking Glass for years, and it has extremely influenced my own development as a design leader. And I'm now a coach, and I use all of the learnings from The Making of a Manager to coach people how to be managers. So thank you for that.
Oh, thank you.
And it made me realize I have a question for you. So one of the essays I loved the most from The Looking Glass, I can't remember the title, but it was about the importance of being a follow-through person, not just an idea person, but a follow-through person. And this went straight into my brain, and I realized, so briefly, the essay for everyone to understand is, of course, you can have a great idea. Almost anyone could have a great idea. But in a company, to make outcomes occur, you have to be a follow-through person. And it's not always about having the best idea, it's about having the best follow-through. And it changed my life when I read that essay. So I was curious, while you're talking about the influence of AI in product development, how does your attitude about follow-through and the importance of being a follow-through person carry into this era we're in now? Thank you.
That's a really good question. Thank you so much, by the way. It means a lot to me to hear that it was helpful for you. Because I write these things, and they're kind of like letters to myself, like what I need to hear. And I always get so delighted when other people find it helpful. So I'm like, I'm not alone in this world. I think that one of the things that your question made me think about is already this idea that like it's so easy to express the first version of the idea with vibe coding, and it's actually really difficult to extend that to the rest of the product development process to get something into productionization, right? So it's almost like we made the first part of it easier. We made the expression of ideas easier. We can get very, very excited about them, but actually making the thing, work for the outcome that you were going for, which is what I think, we're all trying to do as builders, right? We're like, it's great to build the thing. It's great to have the idea. It's great to, have a mock or a live version of it working, but it's got to go out there in the world and make some impact. And if it doesn't make any impact, then sure, it was fun, but like we didn't really do what we set out to do. And I actually think it's very I have so many projects I've started in the vibe coding era, and it hasn't actually gone anywhere. I thought I was going to do this, and I was going to build this internal thing for my team, and it's going to be part of the internal process. And I got 70% there, and I didn't actually carry that through to the impact. And so I actually think this message of, well, what is the impact we're looking for, and can we still measure it based on what actually happened, continues to be a very, very important thing for us, because it's almost easier to feel like you're making progress. And it reminds me of this poster we used to have at Facebook, which was my favorite posters, and it's of a rocking horse. And the words say, "Don't mistake motion for progress." I think that a lot of this shiny AI stuff can make us feel very excited because we a lot of motion, and look, we're all looking at this and it's awesome, and even everyone's got even more ideas. But are we actually taking it all the way through and impacting customers? Right? That's what I think it means to be a builder here in this era.
And I think that the first generation, it's easy to build from scratch, blue sky, greenfield. But increasingly, people realizing this thing of, well, it's a whole other use case. If I've got 1,000 lines of code and I've got a design system, so I can't just vibe code whatever I want. I need to live within these constraints. That it's starting to address that more and more. I actually, for the first time, was speaking with a client, and their PMs have get access and have a local dev, and they can fix. But now they can't deploy it, but they can push a pull request to get reviewed. And so the interesting thing is like little bug fixes and stuff like that they can do. The other thing I'll say is we're at a very important inflection point right now with the LLMs. If you use some LLMs, you will get in the debug death loop and you will never get out. And then I switch over to another one I won't say. And it's like, I feel like I just got upgraded to a Mercedes-Benz. I'm like, oh my gosh. And it just solves it the first time. So like the models do matter. And I think we're at this inflection point. Like GPT-5 specifically was designed to be better at coding than previous versions to better compete with Claude. That was very, very deliberate. In fact, one of the early review videos of it, it was spitting out like HTML comments and text output. You're like, So anyway, so I think we're in an interesting inflection point where everybody sees they want the rubber to meet the road. They don't just want a bunch of hype.
Yeah.
And people want to drive it forward. And I think you do see some, on the farther end, some hardcore engineers really using Cloud Code, really using Cursor with production code. So it's like, I almost now distinguish between vibe prototyping is the left side and vibe coding is the right side. And so.
I also think though, when we lower the bar, everyone makes more things. It is still harder. Like attention is still quite finite. And so to capture attention and to win over customer hearts and minds it's still a competitive game, because now if everyone has access to these tools and everyone can make things better and faster, the competition is still there. And I think we still have to hold ourselves, like if our goal is to win in a marketplace and be better than our competitors and win over those customer hearts and minds and dollars, that I'm not sure that is getting any easier. In fact, it might be getting harder in some ways, and we're at least more competitive.
Cool. Well, I think that's a great point to end on. Why don't we end it there and we can just do individual Q&A with folks, okay?
Cool.
All right, thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.